Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Sharon Bonney. I'm the Executive Director for the Coalition on Adult Basic Education, and I am just delighted to welcome you to today's webinar. Our webinar today is Language Lifts to Help Them Soar, Planning ESOL Instruction Using the English Language Proficiency Standards. And we are just so excited to have you here with us today. I'm going to run through a couple of slides real quickly, and I'm going to pass over to Robert Breitbart of Burlington English because their support has made this wonderful webinar possible. So all of you will receive a certificate for CEU verification within 24 hours. That will come to you directly from Zoom. As well, this is one of 50 webinars that we deliver annually on trending topics from national level expert presenters. Really, the goal of our webinars is to bring professional development outside of the brick and mortar of our COAB conference. So as many of you know, we have national conferences. We try to take the best of the best presenters and bring them to you in webinars so that those who cannot attend our conference can access professional development. As well, we have just started our series of Manager Mondays. 2 weeks ago, we had our WIOA Basics, and next Monday, coming up, we'll have the National Reporting System. Then we'll have Basic Adult Education Structures and Activities, IET and Career Pathways, and leveraging WIOA Title II funds with other resources. So we've got a great lineup here for local program administrators. As well, I just want to remind everybody that this webinar and future webinars, all of the materials will be uploaded to our Adult Educators repository, and you can access the information and download, upload your best practices as well. There's a number of thousands of adult educators on there, so it's a lot of resources available to you. On a completely different note, we have our COAB Board of Directors leadership opportunities. So Vice President for Membership, Region 2, Region 4, and Region 6. If you've ever thought about helping to lead COAB, this is a great opportunity, and we put out our call for nominations just recently. So I want to encourage you that if you feel this would be a good fit for you, go to our website and look for more details there. We also have our national awards that are now open. We're accepting applications for Teacher of the Year, Administrator of the Year, Adult Learner of the Year, State Innovator. So if there's something really cool taking place at the state level that you're proud of, Workplace of the Year, this is where if you're working well, Title I and Title II, you have an employer that you like working with, you might want to nominate them. And then Advocate of the Year. So all of these, the first three are $10,000 each, the second three are $2,000 each. I really want to take a minute to focus on this Advocate of the Year because this is really what helped us to stave off the funding cuts. As many of you are aware, we were looking at $87 million in funding cuts to our field. Coming together and through all of those who took action when we sent out our alerts, we were able to successfully add $60 million to the budget. So thank you for your help on that. If you are someone who enjoys advocacy, who takes action when we send alerts, you may just be someone who would consider for this Local Program Advocate of the Year award. So go to our website for more details. Also, just want to remind everybody we have an adult learner membership option. It is now free for the year. Our goal really is to onboard as many adult learners as possible, and we will be announcing very shortly a partnership that we have with Amazon where we will be helping adult learners get jobs starting at $19 per hour with retirement. So we've got some really great benefits that we'll be talking about for adult learners, but that's one of them that we'll be launching very shortly. As well as insurance. We have insurance options for adult learners, $60,000 of life insurance free for 2 years, simply by being a member and applying. We will also have an adult learner strand at our conference. We'll also have an adult learner ambassador program at our conference. We'll have more than 35 strands at our national conference. We have our mini grant options that are open right now, so that's where we defray the cost of registration to attend. So we hope that you'll join us in New Orleans, Louisiana, March 31st through April 3rd. And like I said, we have over 35 strands by national partners on a number of different topics. And in closing, we have our national journal, the COAB Journal, that has had over 11,000 downloads. Our next edition will be on prison literacy. So this past edition was Career Pathways, really well received by the field. This next edition will be prison literacy. So if you have an article that you're interested in submitting, go to journal@coab.org and submit your session today. So with this, I just want to turn this over now to Burlington English. Many of you use their products. I can't say enough about their products because They just produce quality products that really support the field. And then as well, because of Burlington English, we're able to offer this free of charge to our members. So I'm turning this over to Robert Breitbart.
Hello, thanks so much to Sharon Bonney, to all our friends at COABE, and to everyone out there in internet land. Super happy to be with you. So a big joy in my 20 years in the field as a teacher, coordinator, and local director was participating in things such as this. So we at Burlington are just thrilled to be able to sponsor this. Really amazing. You're in for a special treat today with successfully addressing the ELPSs with Jamie Adelson Goldstein and with Lori Howard, two phenomenal pillars. So if you haven't seen their work in the past, I promise you're in for a fantastic treat. And speaking of something that's really amazing is as you're looking through and you're doing the work with Lori and Jamie today with the ELPSs, just know that we at Burlington have done all the heavy lifting for you. So whether you're thinking about getting into Burlington English or if you're a current user, just know all the correlations have been done for you. If it's one of the first times you're seeing Burlington English, just know that not only are we courseware that students use in the lab situation, but we're in the classroom with projectable lessons, print-on-demand worksheets, everything a teacher would need for an entire year's worth of lessons, and as well as our really phenomenal, recently enhanced mobile app. So whether it's in the classroom, in the lab, at a distance, that's what Burlington's taking care of. And as you can see, addressing the ELPSs. And of course, the neat thing that's done is it's not just the English Language Proficiency Standards in isolation, but we put them in a context of the WIOA common measures. So as you see here, whether it's getting a job, planning for that job, any of the career exploration and soft skills, which is our newest, most innovative and enhanced course that you'll want to check out, you're going to find the ELPSs in them. Perfect for if you're integrating everything Jamie and Lori is going to be talking about in the IELCE initiatives. Burlington is perfectly matched, whether it's preparing learners to enter into something like that or support them while they're there. And again, 4 skills, not just listening, not just speaking, not just reading, but writing as well. So really covering all 4 skills. And then to wrap up, all the kind of, whether it's informational text, the kind of nonfiction that's emphasized along with literature, Burlington gives you everything you need. If you'd like to find out more, please visit us at burlingtonenglish.com and also in our YBE tab. Thanks to Vicki Denkus, our wonderful support person, for putting all this together. We have our new catalog available there. So with all of that, again, you're in for a real treat. So again, 2 great friends, Lori, Jamie, and I'll turn it right back over to Sharon. Thanks for all you do, Sharon.
Fantastic. Thank you, Robert. So it's now my pleasure to introduce you to our presenters, and I have off my video here because I want to read their bios too. They have some fantastic bios. First, Jamie Adelson Goldstein, and probably many of you have seen her name on textbooks and that sort of thing. She does great work. Jamie Adelson Goldstein of Lighthearted Learning is a curriculum consultant and teacher educator who most recently has worked with agencies across the U.S. to support adult ESOL instructors' integration of rigorous and contextualized instruction aligned to 21st century standards. She has developed and facilitated face-to-face and online professional development for California, Wisconsin, Florida, and Massachusetts, taught methods courses for TESOL and Ryan Adult Credential Program at UCLA Extension, and is a frequent presenter at state, national, and international conferences. Throughout her 35 years as a teacher educator, Jamie's focus continues to be on refining instruction that respects and differentiates for the needs of both learners and instructors. Her recent publications include the Oxford Picture Dictionary 3E, Step Forward 2E, and Links ESL Pro Digital Magazine, Preparing English Learners for Work and Career Pathways. So that's Jamie Adelson Goldstein. Then Lori Howard. Lori Howard is an ESL consultant, teacher, educator, and author of reading textbooks for adult ESL learners, including the Read All About It and the Read and Reflect series. She is also the AFLA WIOA Title II Program Specialist Coordinator for CASA, specializing in IELCE, Integrated English Literacy and Civics Education. She's provided ESL teacher education in California, Florida, Illinois, Maine, and Singapore, and is a frequent presenter at state, national, and international conferences. Her many years of experience in the field include teaching ESL and vocational ESL and administering ESL programs, being a TV video teacher on the Los Angeles Unified School District's Learning English video series, and teacher training through video series published by Pearson. Wow, so it's just my pleasure to introduce you today to our presenters. So Jamie and Lori, we're really looking forward to this presentation.
Thank you so much, Sharon. Thank you, Robert. Welcome everyone to Language Lifts to Help Them Soar, Planning Adult ESOL Instruction Using the English Language Proficiency Standards. We're really excited to be with you today, and our slides are coming up in just 1 second. There we go. And the next one, Jamie. I'm Lori Howard, and the handout you see pictured here was sent to you by COABE recently. It would be good for you to have it available to you either on your computer or print it out so that you can refer to it during the webinar. But if you don't have it, you'll be able to follow along anyways.
And I just want to say hi, I'm Jamie, and you'll notice at the bottom of this slide that there is a link. This link will take you to a Google folder, which will have the PowerPoint slides, which you can also get at COABE, but it will also have additional resources that you may be interested in. We'll talk more about that later.
Great. And these are our goals for today. By the end of our time together, you should be prepared to launch your own exploration of the English Language Proficiency Standards and be able to try out a lesson planning template that supports your integration of the ELP standards with your English language instruction. This will help you and your English learners work towards their academic, workplace, parenting, and civic goals. During our webinar, if you have any questions, please put them in the QA box that's down at the bottom of your screen, and we'll answer your questions at the end of our presentation. If we don't get to your question, we'll either email you or answer it in the follow-up that will go out to everyone tomorrow.
And let's, before we launch into our content, let's see what the funds of knowledge are in this group. We're going to ask you to rate your familiarity. We're going to put up a poll and rate your familiarity with both of these standards documents. As the poll comes up, this is, we actually want poll A, Sharon.
Okay, sorry about that. Hold on 1 second, folks.
Now the surprise is ruined.
No, I'm sorry. There we go.
If you would rate your familiarity with the College and Career Readiness Standards. Are you very familiar, you've seen them, you're not familiar? And then poll B is to rate your familiarity with the English Language Proficiency Standards. And I'm not sure if you have to scroll to see the remaining pieces to mark that or not.
They are voting, just so you know. So
okay, great.
Yes.
So we'll do 30 seconds of voting and get results.
So we have 129 have voted so far.
And that's out of 176. Come on, you other 40. That was my quick math. Estimation is everything in the 21st century. Are we at least 150, Sharon?
We're now at 137.
37, okay. Lori, shall we just go with 137?
Yes, why don't we, yes,
let's just go with 137. So if we could see the results.
Yes, ma'am.
Terrific. So you can see that we have at least a solid group, more than 50% who are familiar to very familiar with the College and Career Readiness Standards, and a little less so with the English Language Proficiency Standards, but at least a strong contingent have seen them. So if you're new to the standards, either one, we'll help launch your exploration. And if you've checked that you're familiar or very familiar, we hope that this dive into the standards, specifically the English Language Proficiency Standards, but we'll touch on CCRS, will help you reflect on ways to refine your alignment of the standards to your instruction. Before we launch into the standards, we'd like to talk about one of the key elements that really supports the credibility of these standards, and that's the guiding principles that underpin them. These represent our field's known practices and principles, and they've long guided our English language instruction. The document for the English Language Proficiency Standards states that these guiding principles were intended to ensure that the selected standards will help all of us in adult education recognize both the strengths and needs of adult ELLs. So notice that that's just not about ESOL only, that's about all of ABE. The guiding principles are not presented in any particular order or hierarchy, and no sequence is implied. So let's take a look at them. They're listed on page 2 of your handout, but you can also see them on the screen here.
And the first guiding principle is that adult English language learners have the potential to meet state-adopted challenging academic standards.
And the second one really talks to the fact that we know our students differ in their languages, in their ages, in their educational background, and most certainly in their goals and needs.
And the third one states that our learners' funds of knowledge are a resource for their learning.
I especially like number 4 because it acknowledges that social language has a very important role in English language acquisition. That's something that CCRS does not touch on.
And number 5 is really a link back to the college and career readiness standards, talking about 3 key instructional advances form the basis of the standards that English language learners must access.
We know that for relevance and 21st century accountability, we need to be helping our learners engage with a wide variety of informational texts.
And one important aspect of the standards is that scaffolding is an essential tool for teachers to assist students' language learning.
Number 8 is one that you may not have as much familiarity with, but certainly very important that we concern ourselves with our learners with disabilities have specific instructional needs that we need to meet.
And number 9, being in the 21st century as we are, we need to make sure that multimedia technology should be integrated into instruction.
Number 10 speaks to our colleagues in content classes, but also tells us that we need to be addressing content. For our content colleagues, they need to be looking at the English learners in their classes and scaffolding for them.
So in 30 seconds or so, we're going to put up another poll, but before we do, we'd like you to review the list of guiding principles on page 2 of your handout and consider which of these principles gets the most attention in your instruction or in your program. If you don't have access to the handout, don't worry, you'll see the guiding principles in just a minute on the screen. So take 30 seconds to review them.
You want Sharon to put up the poll now, Lori?
Yes, please. So Sharon, can you put up the poll for slide 7? And then if all of you could consider which of these principles gets the most attention in your instruction or program.
Okay, launching it right now.
Thank you. And
Yes,
here's
ma'am.
where you'll see the standards.
Actually, it looks like we're only showing the numbers.
Yes, I'm so sorry.
So let me go ahead and I'll flash back on these. So in case you need a little review, those of you that don't have you can take a quick look over here to get a sense, and then.
And you can move the poll to your right if you want to see. So if you could just mark which of the standards.
Which of the principles?
Which of the principles gets the most attention in your instruction? And you can choose more than one.
And Sharon, will you let us know when we have about 130 responses?
I sure will. I could see it building. We're at about 49 right now. Yeah,
Okay.
We have more people. Yeah.
Oh, is
63. Yeah, so people are definitely responding.
Okay.
So Rebecca, I see that you're asking about choosing more than one. I think that's my mistake. I think I guess you can just choose one. Sorry.
We're up to 95.
Can you go back to 1 through 5,
Sure.
Jamie? Okay, why don't we?
So 60% have voted. We're now at 110. Okay.
That's great. If you want to just show the results, then we'll move forward. So we can see from the poll that number 7 has the largest percentage, which is scaffolding. And that happens to be what Patsy Egan, one of the panelists on the poll, called ESL teachers' superpower.
Mm-hmm.
But you can see that by virtue of the fact that you could only select one, all of them are selected with one exception. One is quite minimal, and that is number 8, the one about learners with disabilities. And the fact that we have 9 of these that are part and parcel and have an impact on our instruction, we're doing what needs to be done. But I think looking at number 8 and the idea that our learners with disabilities have specific instructional needs is something that all programs and instructors need to take a look at. So we can close that poll.
Okay, ladies, it's closed.
Thank you.
And now we want you to think about English language instruction over the last 18 years or so. Think about what's remained the same and what's changed. Take about 30 seconds to think about this question, what has remained the same and what has changed. And then we're going to show you what we think in just 30 seconds. So
we should sing to them while they do this, Lori. That means dead air is really bad.
Feel free, Jane.
I don't think I will. I don't have that standard. I've not achieved that standard.
So we just want you to consider this. Jamie, why don't you go ahead and
go ahead and
fill in. So some things that Jamie and I think have stayed the same are community building and trust, the fact that classes are multi-level, and that adults have immediate need for learning English.
And some of the things that we thought that have shifted in the last 18 years is the focus on college and career readiness. Moving away, not saying that life skills aren't essential, but that's not the key that we're looking at. We're looking at college and career readiness, that our funding is focused more on integrated education and training, workplace and career pathways. And probably most impressive for us right now is that the English Language Proficiency Standards are available.
Great. And Jamie, they're asking us to share the link to the handout, and I don't know if it's on the wiki or if Sharon could share it.
I can take us back really quickly to our.
Okay.
I can't do it with Zoom as quickly as I would like, but it's a very easy link to remember. So if it's bit.ly at ELPS COABE 1115. So I'll just put that down there, and the handout should be up there.
So I just want to double check. Was that what you were just showing, the bit.ly?
Yes.
And then, I'm sorry, if you give me that one more time, I'll make sure to put it right here in the chat box too for everybody.
Oh, okay. It's ELPS. Lori, can you?
Sorry, I don't have it.
Okay, I'm going to go back to the beginning. This is the great thing about, unfortunately, because I'm not in presenter view, it's ELPS COABE 1115.
Okay, great. Got it, ladies.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Sorry if this is giving you a headache. I'm going very quickly so that hopefully it won't. All right. So back to our amusing image of what you may be feeling like at this moment. We are going to do a mini lecture on what led up to the ELPS, and this could seem like a good time to nod off, but we'd like to dissuade you from that path. Perhaps work on a junk drawer or sort laundry to keep your hands busy while your mind is concentrating. Or you could use the Cornell Notes graphic organizer that we have provided for you on page 3 of the handout. And this is a tool that you can use with your learners. Kimberly Johnson and Betsy Parrish talked about the need for learners to learn how to take notes as a transition skill. We have provided these 5 bullets to let you know what topics we'll be covering, and we recommend that you go forward in that way. So let's start with the instructional shift that probably has had some of the most emphasis on, most impact on why we have these 21st century standards. And that is that we've shifted from a sequential relationship between English language learning and content learning, moving into a parallel relationship. And this has a lot to do also with workplace content, not just academic content.
One of the key instructional shifts is prioritizing content-rich informational text. And note that text extends beyond print to almost any input like videos, podcasts, visuals, etc.
A second shift is an emphasis on academic language. We need to teach this language, and you can also think of it as Kinsella does as professional language, so we don't always have to put the word academic around it, but it is the language of texts, it is the language of tests, and it is the language of power, according to Robin Scarcella. So we need to teach this language explicitly, encourage the production of this language, and choose texts with this rich academic language.
And the last instructional shift that we're going to discuss is a focus on helping learners focus on textual evidence and requiring them to refer specifically to the text to support their claims and conclusions about the text.
So the College and Career Readiness Standards are the embodiment of these shifts. And the standards signal an upward shift in knowledge and skills and abilities that students must develop. It also shows that we have an increase in the language demands. It reflects the increase in the language demands across the content areas. And it also identifies specific language and analytical practices that students need to perform. So that's at the heart of the College and Career Readiness Standards.
And the English Language Proficiency Standards are considered a lift for the College and Career Readiness Standards shifts. They're what ESOL professionals need to identify how to help English language learners gain the skills needed to meet the challenges of the CCRS.
So the panelists who worked on the English Language Proficiency Standards drew on their individual expertise as well as the state content standards, the ELPA 21 Consortium of States assessment materials, which are similar to those from WIDA, and of course the guiding principles that we mentioned earlier. We will talk about the specifics of the standards, but I want to share with you that there's a page in it's Appendix C that, along with the guiding principles, again shows how thoroughly these ELP standards support us in English language development. This page of scaffolding suggestions provides ideas on how to differentiate for and support learners who are challenged by rigorous content. It's a limited list, and I'm sure that you could add to it. But as I mentioned earlier, Patsy Egan, who was one of the panelists, thought that this might be the most important element of the standards and reflecting, again, as she said, our superpower.
And we just wanted to also let you know that in January 2018, new National Reporting System, or NRS, descriptors were released from the Federal Office of Education, known as OCTE, that describe the 6 educational functioning levels for English language learners. And these EFLs, as they're called, are the standards used by the federal government to evaluate and approve the tests for adult learners, such as the CASAS test and the TABE test. The language of these educational functional levels are almost an exact match to the ELP standards. So by learning about the ELP standards, you're really also learning about these educational functioning levels. Both documents focus on the 3 shifts of text complexity, evidence, and knowledge, and they emphasize academic language. When you get to the stage of matching curriculum to testing, it'll be easier for you because once you know the ELPS, you'll understand the educational functioning levels as well. So what are the standards? Please look at page 4 of your handout and you'll see the 10 ELPS standards. If you don't have the handout, we'll be showing the standards to you on the screen, and you can see them also to your right here. Jamie and I are going to discuss each of the standards and consider which skills, listening, speaking, reading, or writing, each standard is addressing. And as we do so, please compare your thoughts to ours.
And we'd also like to give a shout out to Dave Coleman, who is the originator of this task. So Lori, looking at number 1, the first anchor standard, what skills do you see popping out at you?
So I notice listening and reading are there, as well as viewing. And I'm remembering that complex text can also be visual, audio, or spoken multimedia.
Yeah.
Let's look at number 2. What skills pop out for you, Jamie?
Well, the first thing I see is participate, which gives me the sense of active or productive. And the oral and written exchanges, that to me says speaking and writing.
Okay.
Sorry.
And it's okay. For number 3, yeah, I see speaking and writing again.
Oh, sure, but I showed it to you. But you know, this one's tricky because look at this. You're speaking and writing about texts. So that to me, that doesn't keep it at speaking and writing, right?
So what you're saying, Jamie, is that there has to be reading here as well.
Yeah, nice integration. And how about number 4? We look at number 4.
So what you're saying, no, let's see.
Number 4, I think we're seeing speaking and writing again, the constructing. So it's productive. It's really productive.
Right. And then for number 5, we've got conduct research. So that means there'll have to be some reading and viewing there, depending on what the input is. And then we're also evaluating and communicating findings. So there'll have to be some analysis of speaking, perhaps, or writing.
Right, and I see with number 4, I cleverly underlined something that I forgot, which is that when we do the oral and written claims, we're supporting them with evidence, and that evidence has to come from somewhere. So
Right.
we probably have listened or we've read. So 4 would probably be an integration of all 4 skills.
So we've modeled to you how we're looking at 1 through 5, and now we'd like you all to look at standards 6 through 10. You see them here on the screen. If you have your handout, mark your handout with the skills that you see. If not, just on a piece of scratch paper, you can do it, or just in your head. Think about which skills are involved. Take about 60 seconds to do that. Choose listening, speaking, reading, or writing, and then we'll tell you what we chose.
And I just want to quickly address one of the questions that's come up in the chat. The handout was sent out to everyone with registration. Lori, maybe while they're doing this, we could pop the handout into the Google Drive if you're able to do that. It doesn't seem to be there. And
okay.
If you can't, I'll try to do it on your next section.
Okay. Maybe.
But go ahead and go ahead and use what you see on the screen for right now.
Okay, Jamie, why don't we show what we've got here for 6 through
Sure.
10?
So these are the skills that we saw. If you didn't get what we have, or you have added to what we've had, that's really not an issue. The ELP Standards Police will not come and throw you to the ground. However, we'd like you to consider taking this task we just did with you and using it at your agency. With your colleagues, because this is an excellent opportunity for you to look at complex text and examine which of the standards you can find evidence for, which of the skills you could find evidence for in the standards. Now, as you went through the standards, did you notice that standards 1 through 7 describe the language necessary for English language learners to fully engage in content? For example, speak and write about level appropriate complex literary and informational texts and topics. Did you also notice that standards 8 through 10 identify the linguistic skills, the vocabulary, the understanding about construction, English language conventions, clarity, that support learners' achievement of the standards 1 through 7? So 8 through 10 support 1 through 7, and you'll probably find evidence for using 8 through 10 in any of your lessons, where 1 through 7 you might be a little more particular about. Oops, sorry.
Okay, so on page 5 of your handout, or here on the screen, we have ELPS Standard 1. One of our objectives for this presentation is for you to be able to navigate the ELP standards. So we're going to review the elements of the standards now. I think those of you who've seen it before are perhaps more familiar, but if it's new to you, the standards are a little bit complex, so we want to point them out to you. So if you'll notice on the left-hand side of your screen, or on the left-hand side of your handout, we have the anchor standard, and here we're looking at ELP 1. To the right of the anchor standard, you'll find what we consider the most important part of the standard, which are the level descriptors. And these descriptors show us the skills that learners at each level need to master. But remember that these skills can be taught within the context of whatever theme or content meets our learners' needs. Also note that these level descriptors are exit standards, what learners need to know when they complete a level. The next section, I just wanted to mention, yes, that unlike the CCRS, the ELPS integrates the skills within each standard. So you see here oral communication and simple spoken and written text. So the English Language Proficiency Standards are different in that they integrate the skills. The next section of the standard is the math, science, and engineering correspondences, and you'll find that in the center of the page. And then at the bottom are the CCRS anchor standards that relate to the ELP standard listed. So if you're familiar with the CCR standards, then you can do that correlation back to the ELPS standard, and hopefully that will help you understand it better.
For those of you that are familiar with the English Language Proficiency Standards, you will recognize that we're showing view 1. There is also a view 2, which is for content teachers, which starts with the CCR standards and then relates the ELPS standards that way.
Right, but view 1 is complex enough, so we're just going to focus on that.
Exactly.
So now, if you have the handout, please look at page 6, and we're going to focus a little bit more detail on the level descriptors. Again, you won't need, we're going to show everything on the screen, so you don't need the handout if you don't have it. But what you're going to see in a second on the screen is a scrambled set of descriptors. And we're going to ask you to look at that. And then, Jamie,
Sure.
next instruction.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Foolishly checking the chat.
We're going to ask you to number each descriptor, putting them in the correct order, number 1 through number 5. So level 1 to level 5 is what we're going to ask you to do. And then you'll have a minute to do that. So let's look at the mixed up standard. So here it is on the screen, and it's on page 6 as well. So take about 30 seconds or so to read the descriptors and put them in order from level 1 to level 5.
Do 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 do.
Okay, hopefully that's enough time. Since the
We're
jingle has
not
stopped.
keeping score here, right? Let's just go to the next one.
Yeah, so let's go to the next slide, and we'll show you the order. There you go. So you can see the order. And now we're going to flip the order, show it to you in order of how it looks actually on ELP Anchor Standard 3. Notice that the first 3 levels say with support. So this is crucial that the ELPS, really the difference, one of the big differences between the ELPS and the CCR standards is that we expect that English language learners will need support as they go through the first few levels. Also notice that level 5, the differentiation between level 5 and level 6 is sometimes very discrete. So level 5 says develop the topic with some relevant details, and then, level 4 says develop the topic with some relevant details, and then level 5 says fully develop. So sometimes it's just the difference between an adjective that changes, what we're exactly talking about here, or how it is described in the standard. Also notice that there's a continuum from low to high. And please understand that although you may be teaching level 3, your learners may not be ready for this level 3 skills. So you'll need to look at the skills in level 1 and level 2 to be sure your learners can do those before you teach the level 3 skills. So for example, your learners may need to practice composing simple written narratives that are in level 2 before they can work on composing the more complex narratives of level 3. And This is the really exciting part, I think, about the ELP standards, is that you see the skills developing in the level descriptors, and you can go back to lower levels or go to higher levels as your students need.
So now that you have a firm foundation in the anchors and descriptors of the ELPS, let's think about how to use them to support our English language instruction. This is going towards our third objective, which is really talking about how we align instruction. Let's start with the end in mind, because that's really a great place to start. What will learners be able to do by the end of the lesson? Because skill instruction isn't a one and done. The ELP standards themselves are not lesson objectives, but we need to be sure that we're embedding these skills within our objectives. They inform our objective, but we want to make sure there's a meaningful context for the learners. Once we have the context and the communication task, we can determine what 21st century rigorous language instructional skills also need to be part of it, or the dimensions, I like to call them actually. So the dimension of academic vocabulary, the dimension of language strategies. What do good readers do? What do good writers do? What do speakers do to make sure that they're clear? The critical thinking dimension and the academic discourse dimension. So these elements are all things that when Lori and Patsy Egan and Sylvia Ramirez and I sat down to think about how would we plan a lesson with the ELPS in mind, these became part of our planning concept. On page 7 of the handout, and again, you will be seeing the pieces of this as we go through on the screen, so if you can't turn to it, no problem. I promise you have it or will have it soon on in the Google folder. We've created a template that connects the objective to the ELPS and CCRS. It asks you to work, actually, but it prompts you to do that. It ensures that the elements of rigorous instruction I just mentioned are part of the lesson, and then it gives you a space to outline the lesson. So you can see these parts here. I'm not going to go into great detail by showing the parts. And notice one of the things that we wanted to do was highlight that there still will be, along with academic vocabulary, there will be high frequency vocabulary that you'll be bringing in. You just won't have to spend as much time teaching concrete words that learners can use themselves. Notice also on the last 2 rows, we've given you a checklist. Obviously, there's an other element for the checklist, but that will hopefully prompt you to see how can you integrate these dimensions that are part of CCRS and ELPS into your lesson. And then a WPIA-oriented lesson outline, although you could just as easily make any type of outline work for this. If you had task-based or you were doing inquiry-based, you could just fit it in here. On pages 8 and 9, you have a reading and an answer key, more or less, of a lesson plan put into this template that we've created. What we'll do for the next couple minutes is talk about how we got to the ELPS element of this. But in addition, you have 5 levels of readings and lessons on the folder so that you have an opportunity to spend a little more time with this content. Obviously, this webinar is an opportunity to launch into it. We're going to focus on the ELPS correlation connection and what it looks like. So we look first at the standard, then we look at the descriptor. And as Lori said, sometimes we're not going to pick the descriptor that matches exactly to our level. We're going to pick the descriptor that our learners need to work on. And then we can, by virtue of the beautiful document, pull out the CCRS, pull out the College Readiness Standard, anchor standard that aligns to the ELPS. So how did I choose my first standard? I looked at my reading, and the first thing that popped out at me was vocabulary. I knew that for the learners to be able to attack this reading, which comes from the occupational handbook, and has been adapted, in this case, for low intermediate. We've adapted it for basic literacy through advanced. But in this case, you're looking at the piece of the reading from the low intermediate text. And I can see that there are words in here that I'm really going to focus on. And I don't know if you recall that I mentioned that 8 through 10 are the linguistic standards, and it's pretty likely that you're going to have linguistic standards, so it's a safe place to start. So standard 8. English language learners can determine the meaning of words and phrases in oral presentations and in, literary and informational text. So I'm going to pop in 8. But that doesn't tell me which descriptor I'm going to use. I have a lower intermediate class. I'm going to check out the descriptors and see which level descriptor or descriptors will work for me. So I'm going to stick with the level 3 because it says determine the meaning of general academic and content-specific words and phrases in written texts about familiar topics. Now I'm just going to roll it back just a little bit because I forgot to mention my objective. And my objective for this lesson was that learners will be able to interpret job descriptions found in the occupational outlook, and that they would be able to determine the most important facts from that job description so they could determine whether or not they would want the job and explain why or why not. Now that's the intermediate level objective. But in order to get to that objective, they need to be able to interpret the vocabulary accurately within that reading. So that's why I chose this particular standard and this descriptor. Now I'm paying attention to what Lori said, and I'm remembering that some of my learners might not be there yet. So I look at it and I say, okay, level 2 says determine the meaning of frequently occurring words, phrases, and expressions. And I say, no, really the reading, that's not really what they're after in that reading. We really do have some academic material to consider. So I'm not going to work with the level 2. And the level 4 descriptor really is very similar to the level 3, so I don't really have to worry about it. I know that if I work on helping them determine the meaning of those academic words, I'm in the right space, and I can use vocabulary learning strategies, language strategies that are appropriate across different levels. That was a speed course through what we're doing, but you can, if you go to the website, to the Google folder, you're going to see low intermediate text and the complete lesson that I just showed you a piece of. And if you'll notice, I don't know if you can see it at this size, but you'll notice that I've also seen that with this reading, I'm going to be working with Anchor Standard 1, because that's about constructing meaning from text. And I'm going to work with Anchor Standard 2, because that's about being able to discuss text. And then I'm going to be able to do Anchor Standard 4, because that's finding evidence from text. So the more I know about the standards, just the general anchor standards, the better I can continually relate them back to my lessons. And as Lori mentioned, because these are skill-based, they work within multiple content and multiple levels. So that brings us to our Q&A, which I suspect we have a few of. Lori, would you like to address?
I'm sorry, I had muted myself. Would you please make sure that you put your questions in the Q&A box rather than the chat? I've answered the basic Q&As that came up originally, but now if you have questions about the content, especially what Jamie was talking about with the lesson plan, we'd love to see them in the Q&A chat.
Okay, so I will answer what I see in the
okay.
The text in the chat, and then if you write additional ones, then we'll go ahead and answer those. I can tell you that all the major publishers are correlating to the ELPS. So Oxford has, Cambridge has, Pearson has, National Geographic has. So you can look at their low-level texts and you'll see the ELP correspondences. So yes, Venture, Step Forward, Standout, and Future have been correlated. Okay. I'm looking to see if I see any more questions.
It says just please repost the links to materials. I didn't get the handout link, so it is in the chat. If you want to scroll up in the chat, you can find it there, Gail. And when you go to the link that COAB is going to send you, the links will all be there on our handout as well as on the slides that you'll see.
And I say, Myrta's saying that the bit.ly URL is getting blocks, but it is HTTP. You can just do the standard HTTP /www. Okay, let's see if there's any new questions. It's a little. Do you see any? Oh, I see 3 open. Okay. So the chat is part of your control panel. You should be able to link on that. Click on that.
Down at the bottom of your screen, it says chat. If you click on that, the chat will come up. And I'll look for it and post it in the chat again, so it'll be down at the bottom. If I can find it. Any other questions about the content, and especially the lesson planning part? We'd love to hear from you about that.
Okay, so and I don't know about the AFLA grant requirements, but I'd be happy to find out. Maybe one of our many colleagues who could post that in the chat. We have.
What's the question?
The question. So if we align our curriculum with ELPS standards, will we be meeting AFLA grant requirements?
So I'm not aware that the AFLA grant requirements are to meet the local standards and state standards. So yes, one of the things it does say is that it matches standards. So yes, the ELPS and the CCRS are the standards that come from the federal government. So if you align to those things, you will be meeting the grant requirements, as far as I understand it.
So we have a couple of people who are still talking about having difficulty with the link. I imagine that Sharon will make sure that this goes out to everybody. There will be the PowerPoint PDF files will be available, and the handout will be available. So COE will take care of it, and we will take care of it, and you will get what you need.
Yes, correct.
That's right. So we're definitely at that point. There was a question about. Let me see. Pointers on how to vet the correlations from the vendors. If you use the template and work with some of the tasks that we've just shown you, I think you'll be able to see pretty quickly whether the correlations are credible. I think one of the great activities, and I think Lori and Dave will back me up on this, is having teachers get together on a textbook committee to look at what the publisher says and what the teachers know, and look for evidence to prove. And I think publishers are trying as hard as they can to make it as accurate as possible. There's a question, Lori, about CASAS aligned with the ELPS.
Okay, I'm sorry. Can you read it to me? I'm not seeing it.
Is CASAS aligned with the ELPS levels?
The new CASAS tests are aligned with the college and career readiness standards. The ELPS are aligned to the college and career readiness standards. So the simple answer is yes. The new goals tests that will be coming out that are currently out for ABE and ASE, and will hopefully soon be coming out for English language learners.
And there was another point here that I saw, let's see, that I was in the chat, I saw that I thought was kind of important. Sorry. Oh, it was about the levels. Okay, so the levels are tricky, and there's no other way to say it than it's tricky, because you have the CCRS that have 5, the ELPS that have 5, and the NRS that have 6. However, there is a great chart that Patsy Egan has produced. She says it's not official, but we will put it up, and it does show the correlation. In the ELPS, you don't have basic literacy. In the NRS, you do. In the CCRS, you have level A, which covers 3 levels of ESL, basic literacy, beginning low and beginning high. So if you try to do the numbers to the numbers, you get apples and oranges. If you do concept to concept, you're fine.
And Jamie, I think someone mentioned that it wasn't printed correctly on the wiki, so I back to that person and hopefully to everyone that will make sure that everything that's in the wiki is coming out correctly.
When you say wiki, you're talking about the Google folder, yeah?
I'm sorry, the Google folder. Forgive me.
No, that's okay. I just want to make sure because
Forgive me. I have my old language I'm using.
No problem. I just want to make sure. Yes. Okay. So I think that we are, I think we're at the point where we want to ask you about your takeaways. And
should we have them put that in the chat or?
Yes, please feel free. If you would just let us know what you're taking away from today. We'll just give you a minute before we bid you a fond farewell.
And Jamie, while they're doing that, do you mind if Robert gives us some parting words?
No, that's lovely.
Robert? We can't hear you, Robert.
First day with the technology company, so
There
that's
you go.
yes. Well, for those at the very beginning, I promised you that Lori and Jamie would just outdo all expectations. I know I took furious notes, so thanks to the ladies. And again, as they're putting everything together, just one more time, as you're taking a look through the English Language Proficiency Standards, again, all the work's been done for you. I've gotten a lot of outreach, folks reaching out. These that you find right here is in our teacher zone. So for all of those using Burlington English, you'll find this in the teacher's materials. And again, as you're doing all of this through the WIOA common measures, again, with like we were hearing, you know, life skills utterly important, but now all of this, getting a job, keeping a job, getting ready for that next career and that next step in a career pathway, the IALCs, as we're building all of this in, all of this can be found in Burlington English. So again, thanks to all of you. I'll see you online at burlingtonenglish.com, and I'll turn it back to our esteemed hosts and panelists here. So thanks so much.
Wonderful. So thank you, Robert. Thank you very much. So Jamie and Lori, is there any parting words you'd like to say before we sign off here?
Yes.
Go ahead, Jamie.
I just wanted to say that there was a comment about the length of the presentation, and COABE graciously invited us to give a webinar on the basis of a 3 and 4 hour pre-conference. So this is a launch, and Lori, take it from there.
Well, I just again wanted to say that this is a very basic introduction. We will be presenting at other conferences during the year, and we hope you'll be coming to those. And I'm sure COABE will keep you posted on any future more in-depth presentations. Again, we will go back into the chat and answer, make sure you have answers to your questions. And we hope you feel ready or inspired to explore the ELP standards for adult education and support your practice, whether it's as an instructor, administrator, teacher educator, curriculum developer, or professional development specialist.
Well, thank you. I just want to say on behalf of COABE, thank you, Jamie and Lori, for your hard work and for taking your 3 to 4 hour pre-conference, boiling it down to just less than an hour for us, really. So thank you to you for your hard work on that. Thank you to our 180 plus participants. And thank you to Robert Breitbart of Burlington English for their support so we can make this free to all of our members. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Sharon, Bonnie. Thanks, COABE.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Bye now.
Bye.
Bye.